Thank you for the opportunity to talk here. Yes, as you heard, I'm representing a small little design agency based in Berlin. And yeah, as I said, small and little indicates that we are not the oldest, we are not the largest ones. The thing that we are doing is trying to do very, very honest work. Yeah, in a way that we are trying to achieve design solutions that are addressing people with and without disabilities. Here you can see some of my colleagues. We are 10 Inkel designers, some like one architect, some product designers, some graphic designers, and yeah, we work in a very, very interdisciplinary way. What we are working with is the full range of accessibility. So we are starting with the elderly people, we are talking about people with reduced mobility, we are talking about the blind, we are also talking about the partially sighted people, we are talking about low educated people, we are talking about people with learning disabilities and also mentally challenged people, sign language speakers. And also the last one is, it is always a little like difficult to put it into the accessibility part, but you know, also people who are talking a foreign language are usually facing a lot of obstacles when they are coming to another country. So this is what we are working in, and this is exactly what I want to talk with you about. I want to talk with you about accessibility, I want to talk with you about inclusion, and but I also want to talk with you about design, because design is, in my opinion, one of the major keys in order to achieve inclusion. And this is something that, from my point of view, is something that designers misunderstand or what they are not aware of. We are the ones that are creating the human life. We are creating our surroundings. When we are talking about accessibility, when we are talking about people with disabilities, there is one huge misconception that is happening usually, and this is exactly that when we are talking about those people, we are just focusing on the one single person with its problem. But actually, also, like people with disabilities are living in a microsystem where you, for example, some friends of mine, Norwegians, actually visiting me in Germany. This picture is clicked on the Polish-German double city, Frankfurt oder Słubice. And the nice thing is, like why I was choosing this picture is exactly that you see there are two brothers, both of them born blind. The one is having a wife with him, she's partially sighted, and the kid in front of them, this is their kid, and she is sighted. And this is exactly something that we are missing when we are talking about accessibility, that those people, they are connected to each other, and we need design solutions that are addressing all of them together, because first then the common and the shared experience can happen. So when we are talking about why inclusion and design, this is one of the reasons, but there are also other reasons why I would like to engage you much more in this topic. And this is mostly because we are not aware of the fact that the average age in Europe is changing rapidly in the next years. I'm very, very sorry, the numbers, most of the numbers I'm sharing with you will be German numbers. But for example, when we're talking about exactly this topic, and you know that like Germany usually tries to be the world champion, then of course, this is something that Germany will experience very, very fast in the next future. We will take over from Japan. Germany will be very, very soon the oldest society in the world. And for example, in 2060, around 34% of the population in Germany will be 65 years or older. And that means that most of them will live with any kind of limitation in their life. They won't be automatically all of them be disabled, but they'll change, they will face obstacles, they will face challenges in their life. And you know, like one thought just 2060, hopefully this will be us who we were talking about. Another thing is also that disability case numbers are just exploding. And this is something that the societies are not talking about. Yeah. So again, here, very, very difficult to find case numbers for Germany. But so those are the latest ones. And there we can see that from the time period of 2005, 2013, the increase of the case numbers have just exploded. With the blind and the partially sighted and the physical disabilities, not that much. But when we talk about speak and language disorders, plus 14%, psychological disabilities, so everything that is connected to anxiety and so on, plus 57%. Mental disabilities, learning disabilities, plus 13%. There is a lot of thing going on right now. And for example, also, like even if I said, yeah, for the blind and partially sighted, not that much, we already know that the case numbers for the blind will explode in the next years. Why? Because of diabetes. Most of the very, very heavy forms of diabetes are directly connected to the eyesight. And even if the news are telling you nice stories about new technical solutions that are making blind people able to see, this is actually bullshit. We don't have the solution yet. Yes. Another thing is that all of us, usually when we talk about disability, we have the wrong idea about people with disabilities. Why? Because we are usually focusing on people who were born blind, who were born with a disability and so on, but this is totally wrong. Only 3% of the people with disabilities in Germany were born with their limitation. And that means that 97% of them have had any kind of an average ability where they were born, and the rest just happened in their later life. And again, this might be us as designers. Last thought is just, you know, like usually when we talk about people with disabilities, we talk about them. And this whole concept of them and us is totally wrong again. Why? Because we could talk about people with disabilities, movement restricted, wheelchair users, and so on. But if we talk about needs, if we talk about users, if we talk about abilities, then we have to face the fact that the concept of like normality is actually not existing. Because like I'm left-handed, or you know, there are people who are under 1 meter and 1 meter 50. We have people who are very, very tall. We have children also not leading up to the standard. We have foreign language speakers, age farsighted, old people. All of them are like somehow differently abled, and they all of them somehow have different needs. And the interesting thing is when we talk about accessibility and case numbers, that actually a lot of those solutions which are connected to accessibility actually are the solution that also many other people would benefit from. If we do it in the right way as designers, that's the important part. And just to point this one out, if we talk about all of them together, we should actually be aware that it is about 1/3 of the society. And again, this also includes us. So them and us is the wrong concept. So design and inclusion, how? And this is like the standard question also of my students in Berlin. And like usually I try to answer in a way of showing what inclusive design not is. And this is exactly this. You have seen those signs before, and we would all agree that a solution like an entrance for a wheelchair user from the back, this is accessibility, yes, but it is definitely not inclusion, right? Because it divides user groups, it stigmatizes, it forces you to take a back entrance, the dummies from the back and the smartphones from the front. This is the wrong concept. So inclusive design has to achieve much more than just the concept of accessibility. And why? Because when we look on what's happening right now, there is a lot talk about inclusive design, but actually most of those designs are rather barrier-free or accessible. Then they are actually inclusive, as the picture that I've shown to you. Why? Because they create an equalization for the disadvantages, but they do not enable equal participation for as many users as possible. And exactly this thought is what is behind the concept of inclusion. So accessibility in itself is the integration of something, while inclusive design is the next step. We are talking about beyond over here. This is inclusive design. Inclusive design, as I said, has to achieve much more, but of course it is totally obvious the accessibility is the basis for inclusive design, yes. But from there onwards, we should be aware of the fact when we think about this example that I was sharing with you, that for example, the usability of a process or a product, the user friendliness, this is the next key to inclusive design. But even more, it is also about the acceptability of things. We have to be stigma-free. We need a market acceptance for products and services. And the last one, also unbelievably important, you know, like usually when I'm talking to my students in Berlin and I'm talking to them, like for you, when you go to a shop and you buy sneakers, you can't avoid that there is a whole lifestyle concept connected to this product. Why should this not also be something that is connected to inclusive design and inclusive design solutions? So the aesthetics, the emotionality of a product or a service are definitely also part of an inclusive design. So the thing is, when we talk about inclusive design, there is a huge challenge for us designers that we have to understand. And this is exactly that there is this huge claim from the 70s already, from the organizations of the people with disabilities, that they want to be talking to. They want that, that we are not talking about them, that we talk with them. So we have to implement people with disabilities in our design process in order to widen or improve our ideas. And this is exactly what we do in Inkel Design. So here, for example, nice rehearsal on tactile paintings for a museum in the northwest of Germany. Another museum project for a church museum in Berlin, where we're test reading some models and different solutions. And also this about on legibility of fonts, because there again, we have, as designers, we have a knowledge on legibility of fonts, but actually there are challenges beyond that should be, again, implemented into our designs and in our solutions. So inclusive design changes the design process. How? As I said, we have to work with people with disabilities. We have to come up with a democratic design process where we, in a very, very early initial phase, are already implementing people with disabilities, because we need an equal definition of the benefits, of the contents and the formal approaches, and those have to be done by people with and without disabilities. And again, we have to talk in a very, very democratic way. And if we achieve this, then also very, very nice discussions occur. So usually there is this one, challenge that you can't solve, that the expectation of someone sitting in a wheelchair for an offer in a museum is on a certain height, which is not the comfort height, for example, for a blind person. So if you make those two user groups talk together, they'll come up with a solution, and you are more like the, the chairholder, or for the solution, but not more than this. First was the equal definition of something. The next is then our design process. But again, me as a designer, I have to reduce myself, and I have to stick to the solution itself, to the accessibility again. because I have to translate the content and I have to transfer it in an accessible form. And this is the only focus that I'm having in my second phase of the work. And this accessible form, again, has to be understood by everyone, or at least as much as possible users. Third is then what makes it so much fun, our profession, right? Third phase is the one where we can come up with an aesthetic form and where we can have put all the joy into it, why we once chose our design, our profession, I mean. But again, here in this phase, very important, I'm never allowed to skip anything within the field of the accessible parameters. I have to keep them and I have to take it further. Then after that comes the prototype phase, and again I'm going back to my workshops, I'm going back to my focus groups, and again the word equal is the important one. We are on an equal level, people with and without disabilities, the clients and the designers, all of them together have to agree that the solution is good or not, and first then we can go for production and implementation of something. Yes, nice speech. I'm usually having like a small sweet collection of horror when it comes to accessibility, because this is exactly what's happening always and all the time when we are not implementing people with disabilities into the process. And the thing is, you are all smiling right now. Ha ha ha, how could someone be so stupid not being aware of the tree? This is the one thing, yes. But the other thing is, you know, if you would ask a blind person, they would say, do you really think that I'm so stupid not to walk straight? So actually, in this situation, if the tree hasn't been there, there would have been no need at all for a tactile floor indicator. The real challenge for a blind person would be that, you know, maybe 200 meters behind the tree on the left-hand side, in between other buildings, is the entrance for a metro station. And if over there is no floor indication there, the blind person would never have the chance of understanding that the entrance is now on the left. This is the real challenge, not this one here. But there are also, like the last one I showed you was clicked in India. This one is here from the German railways, like a fantastic thing again. The idea of putting Braille on train toilets. Totally stupid, because who does really believe that a blind person enters a train toilet in order to think, I'll you know, touch all the walls now in order to find out if there is an information given to me or not. Stupid, bullshit. A lot of money was wasted here, while the actual challenge for them, understanding the layout of a train toilet, because all those layouts are different in between the coaches, right? Which would be solved if they had given a small tactile map on the entrance door, on the outside, of course, in order to make me understand as a blind person. This would have been the real solution for something and the much, much more smarter use of money. Yes, stupid. So some short examples of what we are doing. There is a lot more on our webpage. We are working in different areas. Of course, until now, very, very often for public clients, because the private sector hasn't really started with inclusive design yet. They haven't understood the challenges that we will be facing quite soon. Yeah, the one is that we are working quite much with accessible medias, books, films, anything that you can imagine, is something that we're working with. This, for example, is a nice art book for a gallery in the northwest of Germany, in a city called Münster. We are showing 6 paintings, making them accessible with tactile lines and so on. But the real benefit from this project is, for example, that we're telling a huge background story. Like a large background story where we are telling the history of how the human being has been depicted in the different centuries, from the Middle Ages over via the bourgeoisie to the modern times, and how this whole thing changed. And by that, for example, again, something not only interesting for blind and partially sighted, but again, something, you know, museums quite often expect us to bring already the knowledge to understand the paintings that are represented. And we thought we should, change it somehow. Another project, very special, a project that we worked on, on the concept for almost 2.5 years. It was funded by the German second program, which is having a large TV lottery. And this TV lottery, the whole benefit of this is going into the support of people with disabilities. So what did we do? We came up with a children's book. And this children's book can be read equally by blind and partially sighted kids, kids with average abilities. But we were also introducing or implementing a very special way of German written language, an easy-to-read language, so that we can also address mentally challenged kids, learning disability kids, and, for example, also hearing-impaired kids, because they usually are also facing large challenges when they are supposed to read. Yeah. So the solution here was, it is difficult to see, it is easier to look at the web page. We came up with a system of wider and narrow pages. Due to this system, we could ensure, also in our focus group works over the years, that people with learning or kids with learning disabilities actually could indicate their content, because that was the real challenge of the project. Other things that we are doing are wayfinding systems because orientation is also something that is very, very challenging, not only for us, but also for people with disabilities. And we do see that if we're implementing more accessibility to them, it is actually also becoming for us much, much easier to use them. So this is here for the Jewish Museum in Berlin. Another nice example are those ones that we made for a large state library for the city of Hamburg, Germany's next largest city. Here with a cube that you can turn, that you easy can look or navigate yourself through the different floors of the building, because this again is something which is very, very challenging for blind people. If you are, for example, giving tactile plans placed beside each other. But also here in a very, very intense combination of graphic design and product design and so on. But we take the whole thing further. This is a project that we have done for the Dachau concentration camp memorial site in the northwest of Munich. They wanted us to come up with a solution for the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the camp, and they wanted to implement an offer for the handicapped people, the last large user group who was actually experiencing unmeasurable suffer in those times, and where there hasn't been done anything yet on the grounds. The challenge here was that we had to sign that there is a lot of vandalism happening in those places. Horrible things are done, and we had to come up with a vandalism protected solution. And the worst case that they could imagine was what happens if there comes someone in the night and puts acid onto the surfaces, and they are not becoming aware of it, and in the morning blind people are coming and touching and they're getting burned, or the fingers are getting destroyed. So what we did here is that we came up with a solution where we were implementing tables which you can open on the sides, and by that the space is given so that you can flip the table surfaces upside down and you can close it again. This opening and closing mechanism was so important because we also wanted to enable people in a wheelchair to use those models. And if it had been a very random box, it wouldn't have worked out. Yes. So project like this. And the last nice area where we are working in is then when we are combining content and orientation, and when we are talking about museums. And then here again, wonderful how you see how also all the average visitors of a museum are benefiting from the projects and from the solutions that are given there. Usually, mostly because In a random museum, you are never allowed to touch. And the process of touching something in order to make it, to make you understand is very important to a lot of people. Just as a small fun fact, in German, the word for touching and the word for understanding is the same one. Yeah? And there you see how the haptic experience, how important this is. So here some tactile paintings that we also did for the Jewish Museum in Berlin. Another project that we did, it was a very, very holistic project in the western part of Germany, in the Neanderthal Valley Museum, where the Neanderthal lenses was found once, where we were like doing the whole museum at once in an accessible and inclusive way, where we were adding a lot of different things to just the tactile objects and so on, and even took the whole thing so far that we made an accessible app where everyone can play a game and where all of us can gain more information and knowledge about it. Yes. Last project, because we are quite proud of it, I said until now just the public authorities are somehow asking our services. This is right now something that we are observing which is changing. And what happened to us last year in the pandemic was that like a large first league Bundesliga club came to us, and they asked us if we could come up in the first run with an accessible wayfinding system. And now next year and the year after, we will also implement a lot of other inclusive tools into a football stadium. Because what is happening over there, again, they are understanding that our society will be like growing very, very old and very, very fast. And this is, of course, also their own supporters will grow old. So what did we do? A wayfinding system which, for example, always combines the two-dimensional representation of a surrounding and the three-dimensional one, where we are working with hard color contrasts and a lot of other like small parts of accessibility. Yes. As I said, you can see much, much more on our webpage, inkel.design, and by that I would like to conclude. I would like to conclude by saying, I would like to remind you, inclusion is nothing nice to have. Actually, when we are talking about the UN Rights Convention, inclusion is a human right. And the human right is something that we as designers have to support. It is our chance also to improve our own services and our own designs. But we have to understand that inclusive design actually emerges in a collaborative process. And exactly this process is one which is democratic, where experts for inclusive design have to meet with the clients, but also with the people with disabilities as the experts of their own behalf or rights. By that, I would like to say thank you, dziękuję, and